Hey, everybody. I just got a message I may not be connected, but I hope I am. Hello from Hartford again. I've been in Hartford a lot this week. We are in the heat of the committee process, which essentially means we had a public hearing this week in the Finance Committee. Other committees are also having committee meetings. Finance has we lag behind the other committees because the money committees have to pick up at the end. So our committee meetings are happening a little bit later. But basically for us in the Finance Committee, which is pretty symbolic of the other committees, when you have a public hearing for the leading into the public hearing, there's a lot of meetings about just finalizing the drafting of the bill and making sure it's right to get to the public, talking to the advocates, going through last drafts, understanding the issues. We have some very complicated issues in front of the Finance Committee, especially involving something that's known as the hospital provider tax, which is going to be a hot issue this year. So a lot of those meetings, and then we have a hearing at which we have lots of people coming in, and we had one yesterday to testify and explain their position on bills and their experience with certain issues. And it's often very personal. It's people who are in a certain business explaining how it actually works for them, or people who, his family is impacted in a particular way by a particular issue. So we learn a lot from those hearings, and some of them yesterday. There were a lot of big hearings in the Capitol yesterday, and so the building was pretty packed. And then for the leadership of a committee, what we do in finance, which is I've done in every committee I've shared, the day after a public hearing, we hold a screening meeting, which is essentially for the leadership of the committee and our nonpartisan staff and some of our partisan staff. And we talk about the hearing, and we have our nonpartisan staff prepares a really good summary of they're there in the room listening to the testimony as well, and they're summarizing it, and they're adding legal analysis, things that they think that maybe don't work and need to be reformed, bringing in other perspectives to it. And then we all sit in a room, and screening meetings are typically they're confidential. It's a chance for people to express, it's the ranking members of the committee, it's the chairs of the committee, so it's all the caucuses are involved, to talk about, what they heard, what they're interested in, what they want to hear more about, what they're concerned about. And now that we're getting into the bills that we have drafted in committee, it's the really juicy stuff. So I really like those screening meetings because I, like to encourage everyone to speak up, and really we learn from each other. And it's good to hear perspectives from different angles. And there's awful lot of stuff that is not partisan, and it's just, we're talking about how to make things work and how to make them work better for Connecticut taxpayers. So it's a really interesting and healthy conversation. And then we decide, having those coming out of those screening conversations, we decide, is this bill ready to be supported by the committee and voted out of the committee, or does it need work? Do we need to propose what's called substitute language, which essentially is a language that amends the content of a bill? Because at the end of the day, all the bills we hear will either die or they will be voted on in committee with what's called a joint favorable, which means that we vote in favor we're all joint committees, means it's both House and Senate committees, and it's a favorable report means the majority of the committee supports the bill, and then it's eligible to be voted on on the floor. Or it can be joint favorable substitute, or JFS, which just is, those are the bills that we talk about afterwards and think, I heard some testimony that suggests we really ought to make that amendment, and we add some substitute language, and then that has to be available by the time we vote. So that's what we're in the thick of now. A lot of meeting with analysts. For me, it's a lot of time with our Office of Fiscal Analysts, because they're the ones who do the number crunching, but also with the Office of Legal Research and with the Legislative Commissioner's Office that does the legal drafting. So lots of meetings, hence I've been in Hartford all week. Looking forward to coming home tonight for the first time in a while, and looking forward to this weekend, Connecticut History Day. Torrington is holding their regional event this weekend, which is where, I think about 4,000 students across Connecticut participate in this every year, and the students do projects on a particular theme. And I think this year's theme is Revolution, Reaction, and Reform, which sounds pretty interesting. So I'm hoping to get there on Saturday afternoon at Torrington Intermediate to hear from those students and to watch them be awarded for their presentations. Also, this next week is a legislative favorite. It's called Ag Day, Agriculture Day. It's where a lot of farms and farm-related businesses come to the Capitol and share their bounty with us. It's very popular with legislators. Well done, agriculture industry. And FFA students come from all across the state, and that is always fun. And I know I think I have meetings set up with several of them on that day, so I'm looking forward to that. And then I also wanted to just note, as you can hear, I am immersed in our own committee process. We're in the heat of it right now. It's where our net is big, and we're starting to wrestle it inward, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of meetings because there are a lot of perspectives on things, and it's important to have a lot of contact with a lot of people. And so that's a little bit immersive. However, I, like all of you, do this in the backdrop of bombs falling at the cost of over $1 billion a day and lives lost. And when we are, particularly as someone who's focusing on Connecticut's budget and, working really hard at small numbers and how do we make it work and how do we make sure that to the best of our ability, our resources are focused on those who most need them. It's kind of hard to watch that decision to spend money that way. People are losing their jobs, programs are being cut. We're trying to fill in the gaps. One small example in the Finance Committee that we talked about yesterday was the loss of federal support for grad student loans. That program was completely cut off, and so we're trying to figure out whether we can step into the shoes of that program to some portion of that program. But that's just one of many. So grateful to be in Connecticut, to be able to have the kind of constructive conversations we have here. Very much aware that's not happening in a lot of the country. So be well. Hope to see you around this weekend. Take care.